Tonight, we step quietly into the steamy, flickering glow of a medieval bathhouse, a place where warmth and filth somehow learned to coexist. I am Silas Whitmore, your guide for this evening, and I invite you to settle back, close your eyes, and imagine yourself in a place where the air is thick enough to taste and every breath carries the mingled notes of damp wood, crushed herbs, and the faint but unmistakable musk of too many unwished souls. You are not here to relax, nor to soak your aching bones in the wooden tubs that creak under the weight of merchants, travelers, and weary townsfolk. No, tonight you are here to work. A cleaner, a servant of steam and grime, tasked with scrubbing the residue of humanity from planks, buckets, and barrels of water that have seen far too much of the world already. By the time the first pale sliver of morning light pierces the misty windows, you are already knee-deep in your labors, stirring the tubs, feeding the fires, and trying not to think too hard about what lies beneath the murky surface. The bathhouse is a strange creature. For the rich, it is a luxury and escape from the cold and the dust. For the poor, it is a rare indulgence, a fleeting hour of warmth before returning to drafty huts and frozen fields. For you, it is a place where every bucket you lift and every floorboard you scrub feels like a battle against an endless tide of dirt odor and exhaustion. So, before we descend into this day of steam, sweat, and stubborn stains, take a moment to do something far easier than cleaning a tub that has held 20 strangers and a few secrets too many. If you enjoy tonight's journey, leave a comment with the number 1. If you do not, well, perhaps you should still press the like button. At least your hands will stay clean. The day begins before the sun has even thought of waking. The bathhouse stands silent in the half-light, its wooden walls sweating from the night's condensation, the faint smell of last evening's steam still clinging to the beams. You push the heavy door open, and the air greets you like a damp animal, warm, heavy, and faintly sour, as though it remembers everything the water has touched. The silence is deceptive. Soon these rooms will echo with the groans of tubs, the splash of water, and the murmurs of those seeking warmth. But for now, it is only you, your breath misting as you step inside, and the day's labor waiting. The first duty is always the same, the water. It has been sitting since yesterday, cooled and clouded heavy with floating bits of leaves, hair, and whatever else the bathers brought with them. There is no draining it completely, not when wood to heat the fresh supply costs more than the bathhouse earns in a week. So you stir it instead, pushing a long-handled paddle through the lukewarm broth, watching the debris sink and rise again in lazy circles. Fresh herbs are tossed in rosemary, sage, a handful of lavender, meant to mask the odor, though they mostly just add a layer of sharp green scent over the musty core. The fires must be woken next. You kneel by the great stone furnace, coaxing last night's embers into a reluctant glow-stacking kindling and logs with hands already blackened from soot. The fire hisses, spits, and finally catches, filling the air with a dry heat that mingles with the damp around you until every breath feels like drinking warm fog. Sweat beads on your brow, though the morning chill still lingers outside. By the time the first slant of sunlight pierces through the steam-fogged windows, the bathhouse has come alive. The water trembles as it begins to warm thin ribbons of vapor, rising, curling like restless spirits toward the rafters. You pause, rubbing your hands against the coarse fabric of your tunic, staring into the swirling mist. This is only the first hour, and already your lungs feel heavy, your clothes damp, your skin sticky from the air. You hear the latch click as the outer door is unlocked. Soon the bathers will arrive. But before they do, you glance at the water one more time and know deep down that the real challenge of this place is not the steam or the heat. It is what lurks beneath the surface. You lean over the nearest tub, watching the surface break in slow ripples. The water, if one can still call it that, carries the color of weak tea left too long in the sun. It holds fragments of crushed rosemary and sage, their sharp scent fighting a losing battle against the sourness beneath. Threads of hair float like pale eels, catching the light before they sink again, only to rise once more as the steam shifts. With every stir of your paddle, the broth comes alive, releasing faint bubbles and a smell that clings to the back of your throat. This is not water meant for the timid. Yet it is the same water dozens will share before the day is done. There is no luxury of constant change. Firewood as deer wells can run dry, and the bathhouse thrives only by stretching every bucket as far as it can go. When the tubs cool, you warm them again. When they cloud, you toss in herbs and stir. It is a cycle endless and unkind, and you are the one bound to it. With a sigh, you take up the net, a simple frame of twine stretched across a bent rod, and sweep it slowly through the surface. Each pass brings up treasures. No one wishes to see clumps of leaves, broken twigs, strands of hair, and the occasional unmentionable thing that settles like a dark secret in the bottom of your bucket. You do not think about it. Thinking makes it worse. You dump the catch outside near the refuse pile and return to the tub for another pass. The work must be done carefully, though not entirely for the sake of cleanliness. Many believe that the heat of the water opens the body's pores, leaving the flesh vulnerable to sickness. To them, your task is more than tidying. It is warding off invisible dangers, though you suspect the true danger lies in the things no one can see, the very things this water so willingly hides. The steam swirls around you as you rise from the tub's edge, wiping your damp hands on your already soaked tunic. Outside footsteps echo on the cobblestones. The first bathers are drawing near, their voices carrying through the misty morning air. You glance one last time at the trembling surface, dark and alive, and know this is the cleanest it will look all day, and soon the water will not be your greatest concern. The first footsteps echo against the damp walls before the door even swings open. Low voices, a short cough, the clatter of a wooden sandal on the threshold. Then the door creaks, releasing a gust of cold morning air that seems almost pure compared to the thick steam within. The bathers step inside one by one, shadows first, shapes second. Some come wrapped in coarse wool cloaks, others in nothing but the dust of the road and the fatigue of long travel. Their faces carry the weight of nights without warmth, weeks without washing. The room changes as they enter. The silence breaks into murmurs and the occasional scrape of a bench. Boots and sandals are abandoned near the door. Bare feet slap against the damp planks, spreading thin prints of dirt and ash. The air thickens as their body heat seeps into the already heavy fog, a rising warmth that has nothing to do with comfort. You stand aside watching as merchants lower themselves into the tubs alongside farmers, a weary soldier with a bandaged arm, and even on rare mornings like this, a pale-faced monk whose solemn eyes do not meet anyone's. It is a strange fellowship, these bathers. They share little beyond the need for heat, yet the tubs make them equal. Shoulder to shoulder, flesh against flesh, the differences between rich and poor, pious and worldly, all dissolve into the swirling, herbal-scented broth. The water laps over the rims, carrying with it the faint sheen of oil from unwashed skin, traces of dirt, and things better left unnamed. For you, there is no time to sit idle. You fetch clean cloths for wiping, bring ladles to pour warm water over those who ask, and keep an ear open for the sounds that mean trouble. A cough too harsh, a voice raised in anger, the splash of someone standing too quickly. Bathhouses may promise warmth, but they often deliver quarrels as well, tempers frayed by heat and crowding. You know the signs and keep yourself ready to intervene, broom in hand, not just for cleaning, but as a gentle prod to restore order. As the last of the morning light fades beneath the weight of steam, the room hums with voices and splashing, alive and restless. You pause near the wall, wiping your brow, breathing the air that tastes faintly of rosemary and old sweat. There is no end to the labor here. The more they arrive, the more the bathhouse swallows you whole. The requests begin as murmurs soft gestures from the tubs. A merchant lifts his hand, fingers pruned from the water, and nods toward his back. A soldier, his arm bound in linen, points to the grime that still clings to his skin beneath the bandage. One by one, they beckon, and you step forward with your bundle of cloths, the coarse brushes, and a small bucket of ash and herbs. Soap, as one might wish for, is rare here. Instead, the cleansing comes from what the land provides: fine ash to scrub away the oil's sand for the tougher stains, and sprigs of rosemary crushed into a paste to leave behind a sharper scent. The tools are rough, and so is the work. You kneel beside the tubs, sleeves damp, brushing gently at shoulders marked by weeks of sweat and dust. The skin reddens beneath your strokes, not from heat, but from the grit, yet no one complains. In truth, they expect the sting. It is part of what they believe makes the cleansing real. Some backs are marked by more than dirt. Raised welts, clusters of sores and scars, old and new weave across the skin. You do not ask how they came to be. Instead, you work with a steady hand, moving slowly so as not to tear open what is not yet healed. The air smells of damp wood, human musk, and the faint sharpness of crushed herbs, a mixture that lingers long after you rinse your hands. Each bather leaves a piece of their burdens behind, washed into the swirling broth that grows darker by the hour. The work numbs you after a while. Each set of shoulders feels like the last, each bucket emptied and refilled in a rhythm that dulls the senses. The murmurs of conversation fade into a low hum, the splashing water into a steady backdrop. You focus on the motions, not the faces, not the marks, not the water that clings cold against your forearms. By the time you rise to stretch your back, the tubs are full, once more, the room thick with mist and the faint hum of voices softened by steam. Your arms ache from the brushing, and the coarse fibers of the cloth have rubbed your hands raw. Yet, as you step away from the last bather, you notice the boards beneath your feet slick and glistening. The steam hides their danger, but you know well what waits below the tubs. The floor itself is becoming another battle. The boards beneath your feet are never dry. Even when the tubs stand still and the voices fade to a low murmur, the floor breathes a life of its own. Each step is a soft suction, the wood swollen with water that has nowhere else to go. The planks gleam in the dim light, a sheen that would almost look clean, if not for the flecks of floating things, herb fragments, tray hairs, grit from the street that cling stubbornly to every groove. You kneel the fabric of your tunic, soaking through it once, and begin your quiet ritual. A scoop of sawdust, first sprinkled carefully over the worst patches to drink up the thin streams of water before they spread farther. Then the broom, its bristles heavy with age and moisture, dragged slowly across the boards. The motion is deliberate, as though the slower you move, the less the smell rises. Each stroke brings up what the eye prefers not to see: a soggy mat of wilted leaves, pale slivers of skin, the faint trace of something oily that no herb can mask. There is no rushing here. To rush would be to slip, or worse, to spread the filth instead of gathering it. The bathers barely notice your work, their laughter and murmurs muffled by the steam, but their safety depends on these quiet sweeps. A single fall could turn this warm refuge into a place of broken bones, and no one thanks the cleaner who keeps such things from happening. The air presses heavier as the day creeps onward. The heat rises from the tubs, the damp from the floor, until each breath feels weighty slow. Your own steps match that rhythm, unhurried, deliberate, as though the bathhouse itself dictates the pace. There is no escaping the sensation that the place is alive, the walls exhaling mist, the floors breathing damp beneath your feet. By the time the sawdust darkens heavy with what it has absorbed, your arms ache from guiding the broom in those patient circling motions. You gather the sodden heaps into a pail, the wood sloshing faintly as if reluctant to let go of its burden. Another round will follow soon, for the floor never truly stays clean. It only pauses between waves. Outside, a faint bell chimes the noon hour. The bathers do not rise, not yet, but your stomach reminds you the day is far from over. And as you carry the last pail of debris toward the refuse pile, the thought of a midday meal feels almost like a kindness. For a moment, you hope the air outside will taste different. The noon bell fades into the damp air, soft as a memory. The bathers remain in their tubs, murmuring in voices softened by heat, but for you the morning's labor slows at last. You find a corner near the furnace where the stones radiate a steady warmth, and set down your bundle. The air is no kinder here. It clings heavy to your skin, every breath tinged with the mingled sharpness of herbs and the sour undertone that never fully fades, but your legs welcome the pause all the same. From a small satchel, you draw your meal. A heel of coarse bread, its crust hardened by time, and a small tin of broth, thin and gray, still faintly warm from the fire. There is no table here, no quiet space to sit apart. You perch on an overturned bucket, your back to the wall, your knees drawn close as you break the bread and dip it into the broth. The taste is plain, almost empty, but hunger lends it weight. Around you, the bathhouse murmurs on. The splash of water, the soft clink of a ladle, the low hum of voices rising and falling like waves. Every so often, someone gestures for a cloth or a ladle of fresh water, and you rise without complaint, setting your bread aside to serve before returning to your bucket and your thin broth. There is no true pause here, only moments where the work softens its grip. The smell clings even as you eat. It hides in the fibers of your tunic, seeps into your hair, lingers on your hands, no matter how often you rinse them. Each bite carries with it a ghost of the air around you until the food itself feels like part of the bathhouse. You do not taste hunger alone. You taste the steam, the smoke from the furnace, the faint, unshakable musk of bodies and water. Still, the meal passes slow and deliberate, each mouthful measured. When at last the crust is gone and the tin stands empty, you rest your hands against your knees and let your breath settle. Outside, the light shifts softer, now the day leaning toward its latter half. The lull will not last. In the corner, a pair of empty buckets await your hands, reminders that not every task within these walls involves water meant for bathing. Soon, it will be time to tend to the work no one dares to name aloud. The buckets wait in the shadowed corner, their wooden rims darkened by years of service. They do not hold water for bathing, nor the herbal rinses the bathers request. Their purpose is heavier, one spoken of only in hushed tones, or not at all. When the tubs grow crowded, and the warmth lulls men into ease, the bathhouse becomes more than a place to soak. For some, it becomes a place to relieve other burdens. You lift the first bucket, careful with your grip. The wood is damp, always damp, and the liquid within shifts with a sluggish weight as you carry it toward the door. The air above it is different, thicker, a smell that cuts through the herbs and steam, settling deep in the back of your throat. You do not breathe too deeply. Outside the refuse pit waits a shallow hollow behind the bathhouse, where the waste is emptied, covered with ash, and left for the night air to claim. Even here, the scent lingers, a shadow that follows you back inside. There is no praise for this work. Few acknowledge it, though all benefit from it. Without these trips, the corners would sour, the floors would grow dangerous, and the very air would thicken beyond endurance. Yet those who see you with the buckets avert their eyes, as if your task carries a stain that clings beyond the steam and the heat. Some whisper, calling the cleaner's shadow, hands those who do what must be done, so others may ignore it. You return for the second, and then the third. Each one feels heavier, though the path remains the same. Lift, carry, empty, cover, return. The rhythm dulls, thought turning the task into something apart from you, as though your hands act on their own, while your mind drifts far from the smells and sounds that cling to the work. By the last, your arms ache and your shoulders burn the straps of your tunic damp and dark with sweat. When the final bucket is emptied and the pit covered once more with ash, you pause by the open door, breathing the faintly cooler air of the afternoon. The bathhouse hums behind you, voices and splashes, as if none of this labor exists. You rub your hands along your tunic, but the scent lingers still stubborn as the weight in your muscles. And as you step back inside, the muffled roar of voices tells you that the day's stillness is about to end. Evening brings its own burdens, and the bathhouse will soon swell with life once more. As the sun slides behind the roofs of the town, the bathhouse begins its slow transformation. The pale light of day fades, replaced by the dim amber glow of oil lamps set along the dripping beams. The shadows grow longer, stretching across the wet planks like dark ribbons, and the air, once merely heavy, becomes something thicker, a damp weight that presses down on every breath. The steam no longer faint rolls in low clouds curling and folding through the room, catching the lamplight so it glows like ghostly curtains. Evening brings its own tide. The door opens again and again, letting in the cool air from outside for only a moment before it is swallowed by the heat. Merchants arrive in pairs, their cheeks flushed red from drink, speaking too loudly as they shed their cloaks. Laborers step in with slow, weary movements, mud clinging to the seams of their boots. A few travelers wrapped in road-stained wool trail in quietly, their faces pale with fatigue. The noise grows steadily, not sharp or sudden, but a constant rise of voices, like water filling a hollow space. The tubs, already darkened by a day of bodies, churn as more settle into the cloudy water. The rims spill over thin streams, running across the boards in small wandering paths. You sweep when you can, but the floor refuses to stay dry for more than a breath. The sound of splashing joins the hum of talk and the occasional burst of laughter echoing off the damp wood above. Each sound feels slower here, muffled by the steam, as though the room itself swallows and stretches every noise. The air tastes different now, not only of herbs and wet wood, but of sweat and the bitter tang of ale. A few guests sway where they sit, their movements sluggish, their words slurred, and the water ripples gently outward with every careless motion. You keep close to the edge, broom in hand, not for cleaning alone, but as a quiet tool to keep order. A soft nudge, a murmured word enough to stop a drunken stumble before it sends another bather into anger. Hours pass in that dim orange light. The beams drip, the floor glistens, and your breath comes slow and warm, as if the air itself is pulling at your lungs. The crowd does not thin quickly. They linger, lulled by heat, by company, by the soft embrace of the steam that hides the edges of the room. When at last the oil lamps burn lower, you know what comes next. Not rest, not yet. The work ahead waits for quiet, for emptiness, and for the final task that can only begin when the bathhouse has emptied of every voice but your own. When the last bather steps out and the door closes, the room exhales. The voices fade, the laughter lingers only as a faint echo, and for a moment there is stillness. The oil lamps burn low, their flames trembling as if reluctant to remain. The steam drifts slower, now settling into corners, leaving behind the heavy scent of the day. This is the quiet hour, but it is not a time for rest. It is the hour when the water must be let go. The tubs stand dark, their surfaces dull and unmoving. What was once warmth for dozens is now a heavy broth, the color of earth, its smell, clinging to the walls and floor alike. You take hold of the wooden plugs near the base's hands, slick against the damp grain, and pull. The water begins to drain, not quickly, but in long, reluctant streams that carry with them 1,000 traces of the day. The sound is low, a sluggish gurgle, as the liquid seeps through the pipes into the ground outside, spreading the day's residue into the soil. You wait crouched by the first tub, watching as the level lowers inch by inch. Steam still clings to the air, and beads of moisture gather along your brow and chin, falling like a second, slower rain. The room grows colder as the water recedes the heat, fading the stones beneath your feet, leaching away the last of the warmth. The smell freed from the surface grows sharper for a time, and you breathe shallowly, willing the task to pass. When the last of the water has gone, the real work begins. What remains clings to the wooden sides, a dark, greasy film streaked with flecks of crushed herbs, ash, and other remnants better left unspoken. With a coarse brush and a bucket of clean water mixed with ash, you scrub, working in wide, slow arcs. The bristles rasp against the wood, a steady hollow sound that fills the empty room. Each tub must be done one after another until the sides pale again beneath the rough scrubbing. Hours pass in this rhythm. Drain, scrub, rinse, move on. The lamps gutter lower, casting long shadows across the wetboards. Your arms grow heavy, your back stiff, but there is no stopping until the last tub stands empty and clean, waiting for another day to begin. You set the brush aside, flex your aching hands, and listen to the faint hiss of cooling coals from the furnace. The water is gone, the tubs are bare, but the bathhouse is not finished with you yet. There is still the matter of the fires. The tubs are empty now, the boards scrubbed clean, but the bathhouse does not rest. The furnace still glows in the corner, a dull red pulse behind its iron grate waiting for you to tend it. Before the next day dawns, the fire must be brought down and prepared, its heat tamed, but not fully extinguished. It is work done in the deepest hours when the voices are gone and only the drip of water from the rafters keeps you company. You kneel before the furnace, the stones radiating a dry heat that stings the skin on your face. The air here feels different than by the tubs, less damp, more searing, thick, with the faint, acrid tang of smoke. With a metal rod, you rake the embers into piles, coaxing the flames to settle, then shovel out the ash that has built up along the edges. The ash is warm, clinging a soft gray dust that coats your hands and sleeves until you look as though you have been shaped from soot. Each scoop feels heavier than it should, not for its weight, but for the wear in your arms. The day's work has already bent your shoulders and stiffened your spine, and now the heat presses down like a second burden. The sweat on your brow dries almost as quickly as it forms, the air so hot it feels as though it drinks the moisture straight from your skin. You pause, often wiping your forearm across your face, only to leave streaks of ash behind. When the ash is cleared and the flames have sunk to a gentle glow, you stack the remaining wood for the morning. The logs wait along the stone wall, dry and neatly arranged, a silent promise of the work yet to come. You stir the coals one last time, watching the faint sparks rise and drift before fading into the dark above. The bathhouse is quiet, save for the soft hiss of cooling steam, the room bathed in a dim reddish light that feels both alive and weary. Your hands ache, blackened, despite the water you've used to rinse them. The furnace sighs as the last of the wood crackles low, and for a moment you simply stand, letting the warmth soak into your bones while the fatigue pulls at your limbs. But even as the fires settle, the night is not finished. There is still the bathhouse itself, a hollowed space that does not sleep, and it will not be left entirely alone until dawn begins to touch the sky. The tubs are empty now, the boards scrubbed clean, but the bathhouse does not rest. The furnace still glows in the corner, a dull red pulse behind its iron grate, waiting for you to tend it. Before the next day dawns, the fire must be brought down and prepared, its heat tamed, but not fully extinguished. It is work done in the deepest hours when the voices are gone and only the drip of water from the rafters keeps you company. You kneel before the furnace, the stones radiating a dry heat that stings the skin on your face. The air here feels different than by the tubs, less damp, more searing thick, with the faint, acrid tang of smoke. With a metal rod, you rake the embers into piles, coaxing the flames to settle, then shovel out the ash that has built up along the edges. The ash is warm, clinging a soft gray dust that coats your hands and sleeves until you look as though you have been shaped from soot. Each scoop feels heavier than it should not for its weight, but for the wear in your arms. The day's work has already bent your shoulders and stiffened your spine, and now the heat presses down like a second burden. The sweat on your brow dries almost as quickly as it forms the air so hot it feels as though it drinks the moisture straight from your skin. You pause, often wiping your forearm across your face, only to leave streaks of ash behind. When the ash is cleared and the flames have sunk to a gentle glow, you stack the remaining wood for the morning. The logs wait along the stone wall, dry and neatly arranged, a silent promise of the work yet to come. You stir the coals one last time, watching the faint sparks rise and drift before fading into the dark above. The bathhouse is quiet, save for the soft hiss of cooling steam, the room bathed in a dim reddish light that feels both alive and weary. Your hands ache blackened, despite the water you've used to rinse them. The furnace sighs as the last of the wood crackles low, and for a moment you simply stand, letting the warmth soak into your bones while the fatigue pulls at your limbs. But even as the fires settle, the night is not finished. There is still the bathhouse itself, a hollowed space that does not sleep, and it will not be left entirely alone until dawn begins to touch the sky. The bathhouse stands still, at last its breath, quiet its walls, slick with the remnants of the day. The lamplight flickers near the door, casting soft, unsteady shadows across the empty tubs and damp boards. Your work is nearly done, but the weight of it lingers everywhere on your hands, your shoulders, even in the shallow ache of your lungs, as if the steam has left something behind inside you. You lower yourself onto one of the benches, its wood cool against your back, despite the lingering warmth of the air. Your hands raw and reddened rest on your knees. No water, no soap can chase away the faint film of grime that clings beneath your nails, or the smell that has seeped into your skin. It is a scent that follows you home, into your bed, into your dreams, as if the bathhouse itself is reluctant to let go. Every joint feels heavy. Your shoulders burn from the buckets, your spine stiff from the hours bent over the tubs, and your palms sting where the coarse brushes have worn them raw. The heat of the day still lingers in your bones, yet a slow chill seeps in through the soles of your boots, as the room cools, the strange balance of warmth and cold making you feel both fevered and numb at once. This is the price of the work. No one thanks you when they leave their skin scrubbed, clean their bodies, warm their spirits, soothed. Few even notice the hands that stirred the water, swept the floors, emptied the waste, or coaxed the fire to life. They see only the comfort, never the labor. Yet without that labor, the bathhouse would sour into something unfit for anyone to step inside. You sit there listening to the faint hiss of the last embers, the slow drip of water from the rafters, and the sound of your own breath, steady but tired. The room, for the first time all day, is truly silent. You rise slowly, gathering your tools, each movement deliberate, as though hurrying might stir the weight from settling fully on your shoulders. When you open the door, the night air greets you cool and clean, carrying none of the day's burdens. It feels almost foreign against your skin. You breathe deeply once, twice, letting the air fill your chest. Tomorrow the tubs will fill again, the fires will burn, and the steam will rise. But for now, beneath the quiet stars, you walk away, and the bathhouse sleeps until dawn. And so the day of labor fades, leaving only the quiet hum of night beyond the walls. The bathhouse sleeps, now its tubs dry, its fires low, and its wooden beams dark beneath the dim lamps. You step away from it with sore hands and a spine heavy from bending, but with a strange sense of stillness as the cool night air fills your lungs. This work is not one the world admires. The bathers come, they soak, they laugh, and they leave, rarely sparing a glance for the hands that keep their refuge from rotting into ruin. Yet it is those same hands, cracked, tired, and smelling faintly of smoke and ash, that hold the place together. Without the quiet labor, the water would sour, the floors would slick to danger, and the fire would die before dawn. The bathers may never know it, but every clean bench, every warm tub, and every steady flame owes its life to someone willing to shoulder the filth they would rather forget. As you walk beneath the stars, the sounds of the town dim, and the air feels weightless compared to the steam-thick air behind you. Each breath seems to wash away a little of the day's heaviness, though the aches remain. There is a comfort in the quiet, in knowing that for a few hours, the world will leave you alone before the tubs fill again, and the steam curls once more. Perhaps as you find your way home, there is something worth holding in that thought, that every burden, no matter how heavy, has its pause, that every night, no matter how long, brings its own kind of peace. And so, as your narrator, Silas Whitmore, I bid you good rest beneath this quiet sky. If this story has carried you gently towards sleep, leave a 1 in the comments. And if it has not, well, perhaps you should still press like. It is at least a far cleaner task than any you've heard tonight.